We also have Fat Joe sued for engaging in sex acts with minors. We're going to read that because that's kind of pressing. Fat Joe sued for $20 million by former hype man in explosive complaint, alleges rapper engaged in sex acts with minors and coerced him into more than 4,000 sexual acts to maintain his standing. That's a lot. Lawsuit comes after the rapper sued T.A. Dixon in April for slandering him on social media by claiming Fat Joe flew a 16-year-old girl across state lines for sex. Those are the claims. We're not sure if they're true or not. It's all alleged, okay? By the way, this was posted June 19th, 2025. Fat Joe's former hype man, Terrence T.A. Dixon, has filed an explosive lawsuit in federal court against the rapper on Thursday. Dixon is alleging that his former boss, whose real name is Joseph Antonio Cartagena, engaged in coercive labor exploitation, financial fraud, sexual manipulation, violent intimidation, and psychological coercion. Dixon adds that the hip-hop star behind such chart toppers as What's Love got rich and famous while he and his associates deliberately suppressed, silenced, and erased Dixon's substantial creative, artistic, and commercial contributions, which were foundational to Fat Joe's professional success and personal brand. He is seeking up to $20 million in damages. His former hype man, so just a guy that is on stage with him at his concerts, is alleging coercive labor exploitation, financial fraud, sexual manipulation, violent intimidation, psychological coercion. They add this in here as like an aside, but it colors the picture here quite a bit. The hype man is mad because he feels like his creative, artistic, and commercial contributions were silenced in a race, right? So if it wasn't for you feeling snubbed, would you have come out with these terrible accusations of child abuse? Like the feeling snubbed creatively shouldn't even enter the conversation if you're accusing someone of sexually coercing and engaging in sex acts with minors. That should be your only reason to be bringing this forward. But of course, there's a $20 million damages attached to it. The complaint filed in U.S. District Court, Southern District of New York, details so many disturbing claims about Fat Joe's alleged sexual relations with women, including minors, that it contains a trigger warning on the first page of the 157-page document. So that's a lot of stories. For 16 years, Dixon served as Fat Joe's so-called hype man, a common figure in hip-hop who supports the artist by energizing the crowd and enhancing the overall performance. He also contributed as a lyricist and background vocalist on such hits as Congratulations, Ice Cream, and Money Over Bitches. According to the complaint, he had an unrivaled vantage point to observe the rapper's offstage lifestyle and behavior. Dixon is represented by Tyrone Blackburn, who is also the lead counsel in a high-profile case against Diddy, okay? What's going on in New York, man? I mean, what's happening out there in New York? Some fishy things out there have gone down. In February 2024, Blackburn filed a lawsuit on behalf of Diddy accuser Lil Rodney, alleging sexual assault, sexual harassment, and failure to pay his underling. So this is the producer that really kicked off the whole Diddy thing. I kind of forgot about that, to be honest. I don't know what happened first. Did Lil Rodney call out Diddy first, or did the whole Cassie thing happen first? They kind of happened at the same time, right? But yeah, Lil Rodney, he's the one that accused Cuba Gooding Jr. of sexually harassing him at Diddy's place, and there's like video of it and all sorts of weird shit. 1 month later, Department of Homeland Security agents conducted raids at Combs mansions in LA and Miami. Dixon states in the complaint that Fat Joe forced him into humiliating situations, including sex acts performed under duress and surveillance, accompanied by threats of abandonment in foreign countries if he refused compliance. That sounds a lot like Diddy. I mean, excuse my ignorance, but how close are Fat Joe and Diddy? They must be kind of close, right? They're kind of moving in the same directions here. By his own estimation, Dixon states that in the suit, he was coerced into more than 4,000 sexual acts to maintain his standing within the enterprise. Most shockingly, the suit claims that Dixon personally witnessed Fat Joe engage in sexual relations with children who were 15 and 16 years old. Okay, pretty bad. It lists 3 such Jane Does, including a 16-year-old Dominican girl in New York who, in exchange for cash, clothing, and payment of her cell phone bill, would perform oral sex with other sexual acts on the rapper. Very specific. Sounds like Mans was keeping tabs. Man was taking notes for the last 20. Every time he saw something bad, he wrote it down in his journal. And he's like, Fat Joe, if you ever fuck me over, if you don't ever give me this money, I am taking you down. That must be what's happening here, right? It's very detailed. 157 pages, apparently, of this kind of shit. Fat Joe began having sexual relations with minor Doe 2 when she was 15 years old after a concert overseas. Defendant flew minor Doe 2 to New York City and Miami, Florida on multiple occasions. Due to minor Doe 2's body body being adolescent and not fully formed. Defendant paid for her to get a Brazilian butt lift. Oh, dude. Minor Doe 2 eventually left defendant and is now married to a pro athlete. The complaint says if these women decide to come forward, they don't have to, but if they decide to come forward with their stories, Fat Joe might be going down for the books, bro. He might be out for the count. I mean, if some of these women come out, like I said, they don't have to. Coming out and having to testify, it brings up a whole bunch of trauma. It can be very traumatic in and of itself. If none of these women come forward, I understand, but I hope they do, because if what is being alleged here is true, this man needs to be locked up. These are horrible, terrible, fucking disgusting allegations here. Let me highlight allegations. The complaint says Minor Doe 3 is a Latina female who met the defendant when she was 15 years old, turning 16. According to Dixon, defendant was in love with Minor Doe 3. He even contemplated leaving his wife. The defendant paid all Minor Doe 3's bills and even took her overseas to his tour stops. He brought her to Florida and would put her up in a condo he rented a few blocks from his house with his wife. The lawsuit states, in a recorded conversation, Minor Doe 3 and her 15-year-old cousin described in detail to plaintiff how inappropriate it was for defendant, who was in his late 30s at the time, to be fawning over children. Ooh, dude, late 30s at the time? Holy shnikes, man. Gross. Fat Joe is represented by celebrity criminal attorney Joe. Oh, of course Joe Tacopina, just stacking up the rappers, bro. Oh my god. Why does Joe pop up? All right, he was A$AP Rocky's lawyer, which shout out, I'm glad A$AP is free. First, he was Donald Trump's lawyer. Then he was A$AP's lawyer, which I do believe A$AP probably did fire that gun in that case, but I am glad he's free. I don't think he should be locked up crazy for that. But now he's representing Fat Joe. So he better have a damn good case to back this shit up, because this is not looking good for Joe. Tacopina responded to the lawsuit, saying in a statement to Variety, the lawsuit filed by Tyrone Blackburn and Terrence Dixon is a blatant act of retaliation, a desperate attempt to deflect attention from the civil suit we filed first, which exposed their coordinated scheme to extort Mr. Cartagena through lies, threats, and manufactured allegations. What's the civil suit they filed first? All right, we gotta look into that. We will. Law enforcement is aware of the extortionate demand at the heart of this scheme. The allegations against Mr. Cartagena are complete fabrications, lies intended to damage his reputation and force a settlement through public pressure. That's like a clear defense that they have there, because why Mr. Hype Man here came in demanding $20 million and saying that he was wronged financially and all this, that obviously immediately hurts his case. It makes it seem like he's not doing it for the right reasons. He's doing the right thing for the wrong reasons in a way. But if any of these allegations against Fat Joe are true, he deserves to go to prison for any one of these. Even if it was only just one of these 15-year-olds, he deserves to be locked up and punished for that, because that's fucking disgusting and weird. After I'm done reading this, we're gonna see what we can find on the Tacopina civil suit. So apparently Fat Joe with his lawyer, Joe Tacopina, Joe and Joe filed a civil suit against Terrence Dixon first, and then Dixon, quote unquote, retaliated with his own lawsuit. Mr. Cartagena will not be intimidated. We have taken legal action to expose this fraudulent campaign and hold everyone involved accountable, the statement continued. Defendants in the suit also include Pistol Pete Torres, Richard Rich Player Jaspitre, who the complaint refers to as key associates in Fat Joe's quote unquote criminal enterprise. Oh god, every rapper's got a criminal enterprise. Young Thug and Diddy and fucking 6ix9ine, they all got criminal enterprises. These RICO charges getting out of hand, asserting civil claims for violations of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act and the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, it's RICO, as well as related violations under New York and Florida law, including unjust enrichment, quantum meruit, fraudulent concealment, fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and money laundering. The suit additionally names Jay-Z's Rock Nation, claiming that the company which represents Fat Joe knowingly participated in concealing, transferring, and manipulating Dixon's authorship rights and royalty interests and sought to intimidate, harass, and obstruct the hype man's legitimate claims against Fat Joe, Torres, and Jaspitre. So Jay-Z coming back into the fucking spotlight here after he shooed off Tony Busby's lawsuit, but here he is back again in the spotlight. According to the lawsuit, the defendants engaged in deliberate tax fraud schemes in an effort to conceal their extensive wage theft, artificially inflate Dixon's tax liabilities, expose them to unwarranted tax audits and penalties, and systemically obscure the exploited labor. The complaint cites a whistleblower accountant who came forward last year, as well as recorded phone calls that help paint the picture of the alleged misdeeds. The move comes after Fat Joe sued Dixon in April for slandering him by claiming that the Bronx-born rapper, who enjoys high-level political connections, that's a weird way to put it, flew a 16-year-old girl across state lines for sex. Was Fat Joe on Epstein's plane? We need the fucking list! That suit also named Dixon's lawyer Tyrone Blackburn, claiming the pair tried to shake him down for a settlement. This is the right way to fight, Joe. Through the system. You can't fight him no other way, Dixon tells Variety in an exclusive interview. Joe thinks he's a god. Joe thinks he's untouchable. Dixon's suit against Fat Joe goes much further further than his social media posts and states that he endured a wide spectrum of sexual coercion, psychological control, forced exhibitionism, and surveillance-based humiliation. We're gonna need some details here, buddy, including being compelled to perform sex acts under observation, being filmed or directed by Fat Joe in the presence of others, tactics designed to control plaintiff's body, erode his autonomy, and ensure silence. Wow. They detail all of these in a 157-page document. They need to get into the details, though. They're just kind of giving me an overview here. It adds, these sex-based abuses were not private, incidental, or isolated. They were integral to the enterprise's culture of dominance and humiliation, enforced by defendants' associates such as Pistol Pete, JB, and others, and sustained across numerous tour locations including Miami, North Carolina, Germany, Spain, and Wisconsin. In Thursday's complaint, Dixon claims that the activity took place on Market America's corporate yacht and at its mansion properties where Fat Joe orchestrated repeated orgies involving plaintiff, female dancers, and minors. Oh my God, dude, this is everything under the bus, man. The lawsuit adds that Fat Joe used his status as a hip-hop star to compel Dixon and others into degrading sexual performances, often while Fat Joe watched, recorded, or directed the encounters. These incidents occurred under conditions that included the presence of corporate security staff, surveillance cameras, and defendants' management entourage, yet no intervention occurred, supporting the inference that these acts were facilitated by and covered up by the broader enterprise and its affiliates. The complaint continues. Dixon did not willingly consent to participate in these acts. Instead, plaintiff submitted solely out of fear of immediate retaliation, which defendant repeatedly demonstrated would include financial punishment, professional sabotage, abandonment in foreign countries, or physical harm. The lawsuit claims that Fat Joe also issued veiled death threats and witness intimidation via direct messages such as, "You love your family, right? Fall back in 48 hours. We let you live." Do we have those? We got those subpoenaed, right? Though Fat Joe hobnobbed with some of the biggest names in politics, including then Vice President Kamala Harris, there was at least one brush with scandal back in 2010. He and members of his entourage were detained and questioned after a University of Wisconsin student reported an alleged sexual assault following a performance at the city's Orpheum Theater. At the time, Fat Joe's attorney called the woman a pretender groupie, Jesus, who was attempting to shake down the rapper for money. It doesn't take a stretch of my imagination to believe that they were not lying. Let's read about Fat Joe's lawsuit against Dixon. April 29th, 2025, Fat Joe filed this lawsuit first against Terrence Dixon, whose lawsuit we just read about, alleging that Fat Joe slept with a bunch of children, but also asking for $20 million for monetary damages and creative suppression and shit like that. It's a very weird grouping of accusations, but apparently Fat Joe filed a lawsuit first because this man was on Twitter, quote unquote, defaming Fat Joe. So today, Grammy-nominated musician Joseph Fat Joe Cartagena filed a lawsuit against his former hype man Terrence Dixon and Dixon's attorney Tyrone Blackburn for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. In the complaint, Cartagena outlines that Dixon and Blackburn conspired to extort him for money, and it started on March 23rd of this year, when both parties sent a written demand to Cartagena seeking financial compensation for being a ghostwriter and uncredited vocalist on some of Cartagena's songs. So there's the creative theft that Dixon claimed. I'm just making sure I got this right here. I'm curious what came first, the Twitter rants by Dixon or the written demand by Dixon to Fat Joe. They probably kind of happened tandemly, if I'm guessing. The Twitter rants and the written demand to Fat Joe prompting Fat Joe to file this lawsuit. Strike them fast before they can get you, right? That's what I'm picking up from Fat Joe's movements here. He was starting to get some heat, maybe rightfully so, and his first action of defense is, well, you gotta file a suit back. Pretty powerful response there. Makes it seem like Dixon is in the wrong. Very quickly muddies the waters, so they can immediately be like, no, we filed a complaint first, and that's why he's filed another one. And it's like, who came first? See how much digging I have to do to figure it out. It does seem that Terrence Dixon sent this letter of complaints first, and that's what started all of this. In the complaint, Cartagena outlines that Dixon and Blackburn conspired to extort him for money. When the false demand was ignored, they resorted to lower depths for their financial demands in an April 21st, 2025 letter, and threatened to file a complaint not just for unpaid wages and for other compensation, but also, and with utter disregard for truth or decency, false and outrageous allegations against Cartagena that have absolutely nothing to do with Dixon's purported unpaid wages, including unspeakable acts such as statutory rape, forced labor, sex trafficking, and fraud. Additionally, Blackburn made false statements to Cartagena's lawyer Joe Tacopina, insinuating that he verified all the allegations and had spoken to critical witnesses, including one of the alleged minors, who ultimately denied ever speaking to Blackburn. That's not looking good for Dixon. These allegations are completely false and part of a criminal conspiracy orchestrated between a disgruntled former hype man and his attorney, Cartagena said. These two individuals have been scheming together to extort me with their elaborate and ludicrous demands changing by the day. The relentless threats, harassment, and defamation I've endured as they peddle salacious salacious lies are utterly deplorable. Deplorable. I'm taking legal action to expose their misconduct, and I'm fully confident that the facts will reveal this is nothing more than a deceptive and desperate scam. The lawsuit further notes how Dixon has harassed Joe and his representatives on social media and through text messages over the course of the past few years. The allegations against Mr. Cartagena are completely false and part of a criminal extortion scheme orchestrated by an attorney who a federal judge recently condemned for abusing the court system to harass and pressure defendants, Tacopina said. All these high-profile lawyers, bro. We got Joe Tacopina. We got this new guy. Who's this? Tyrone Blackburn. We got Tony Busby. All these guys, they keep popping up. They're not the most trustworthy, these lawyers. The cause may be noble, but the reasoning behind it may not always be so noble. But I mean, like I keep saying, if this actually happened, bro, lock them up. We just need witnesses. We need first-hand accounts. We need solid evidence. We need witnesses to want to come forward, right? If this actually did happen, we need something. This is a lot to be thrown out there with no solid evidence. Mr. Cartagena will not be intimidated by fabricated claims, lies about witnesses, or shameless threats. We are taking immediate legal action to expose this fraudulent scheme, and we will hold all parties fully accountable. The lawsuit goes on to note that Judge Denise Cote of the Southern District of New York previously criticized Blackburn's legal tactics, writing that he improperly files cases in federal court to garner media attention, embarrass defendants with salacious allegations, and pressure defendants to settle quickly. Ooh, well, that's not good. Not good to have that on your record by a federal judge. You can't file cases like this anymore if that's on your record as a lawyer, man. I mean, you can, but it's going to be really difficult. That's tough. Most recently, the complaint also explains that Judge J. Paul Oetken recently issued a warning to Blackburn and asserted that his legal filings are replete with inaccurate statements of law and full of similar irrelevant insults, misstatements, and exaggerations. Yikes. I don't know how to feel about this. Terrence Dixon, if you're out there, if you're listening, if this is all true, find a different lawyer. It's not going to work with Blackburn with statements like that on the record by federal judges, multiple judges calling into question Blackburn's statements of law. These filings full of similar irrelevant insults, misstatements, and exaggerations. I don't know, man. That's pretty rough. I wonder if I can find the lawsuit itself. I need to see if there is evidence written into the lawsuit. Yes, the $20 million lawsuit filed June 19th, 2025 by Terrence T.A. Dixon in the U.S. District Court is a public court filing. How to access the complaint yourself. Access it via Pacer, the federal court's public docket system. Let's try Pacer. Fat Joe? No. Terrence Dixon. Not there. What's Fat Joe's name again? Joseph Antonio Cartagena. It must not be publicly available yet. That's unfortunate. Hopefully soon the lawsuit becomes publicly available, because if any of that is true, we need those details. And if it's not true, we need to know if it's not true, because Fat Joe's name is being annihilated. People are ruthless, right? But fuck him if he did that. Fuck him, bro. If he did that shit, it's over, dude.